Per was the kind of man every woman in the village dreamed of marrying. He was not only wealthy, but also humble, kind, and deeply respected by all. When he finally chose a bride, the entire village buzzed with excitement and envy. His heart had settled on Bai, a gifted seamstress known far and wide for her magical hands that could bring any design to life. It was said she had inherited her talent from her grandmother, and her skill was so remarkable that even people from nearby villages came to her for special garments. Their wedding was grand, joyful, and a little bittersweet for those who had hoped to be the chosen one. But most of all, it was a celebration of a love that felt pure and destined. Soon after their marriage, Bai became pregnant, and both of them were overjoyed, preparing everything with care for the arrival of their baby. Per spared no expense and made sure Bai was as comfortable as possible, excited to become a father. Bai went into labor. Per was beyond nervous. He paced outside the room while the midwife worked, his heart pounding with anticipation. When the midwife finally came out and told him Bai had delivered a boy, he shouted with joy, throwing his fists in the air and laughing like a child. But the moment was short-lived. The midwife's face turned solemn as she added, "But the baby didn't make it. Time froze for Per." He rushed inside and found Bai sobbing quietly, holding the tiny, lifeless body. The scene shattered him. No amount of wealth or strength could protect him from this kind of pain. They had looked forward to this day with so much hope, only to have it snatched away so cruelly. The days that followed were filled with silence and sorrow. Per did his best to be strong for Bai, but he was grieving too. They buried their dreams with their child, and it felt like their home had lost its light. Still, life pushed forward. A few months later, Bai became pregnant again. It gave them a new sense of hope, a reason to believe that maybe things would be different this time. Per was even more careful now, protecting Bai from any stress or harm, but tragedy struck again when the second baby was also stillborn. A third pregnancy ended the same way. By then, Bai was broken. She wept day and night, her spirit fading with each loss. Per, desperate for answers, took her to a spiritualist who revealed that their children's deaths were no coincidence. They were the result of evil forces targeting their family. This spiritualist warned that if they didn't perform a ritual cleansing before the next birth, they would lose that child too. Clinging to that fragile thread of hope, they agreed to the ritual. Months later, Bai gave birth again, and this time the baby cried. For the first time, Per heard his child's voice, and he was overwhelmed with joy. But that joy turned to horror when the midwife told him that Bai didn't survive. Per ran inside and saw the love of his life lifeless beside their newborn daughter. He screamed her name, begging her to wake up. But Bai was gone. Per mourned deeply. The woman who had filled his life with light had left him, leaving only their daughter, Nanji, behind. Life after Bai's death was never the same for Per. Though he found comfort in caring for their baby daughter, Nangi, there was always a void that nothing could fill. He tried to stay strong for his child, pouring every ounce of love he had once given to Bai into raising her, yet deep inside, he knew he couldn't do it all alone. After much hesitation and pressure from those around him, Per decided to remarry not for love, but for the sake of giving Nanji a mother figure and someone to help around the house. His new wife, Ibinabo, was younger and full of energy. At first, she seemed attentive and willing to care for the child as her own. But it didn't take long for Per to see that his heart simply wasn't in it. He respected Ibinabo, but he could never love her the way he had loved Bai. That part of him had died with her. The home felt colder, more mechanical, and despite her efforts, Ibinabo could sense that she was merely a replacement in his eyes, never truly accepted. Still, Ibenabo hoped to win his affection by giving him another child. She soon became pregnant and gave birth to a baby girl named Toyin, or T for short. She had dreams that this child would be her ticket to becoming the woman of the house, to finally owning Pierre's heart. But Pierre's feelings didn't change much. He treated both daughters with care and ensured they lacked nothing. But it was clear to everyone that he had a special bond with Nanji. She reminded him so much of Bai, not just in appearance, but in her calm, gentle spirit. T, on the other hand, displayed traits that deeply worried him. She was competitive, possessive, and often unkind to her older sister. Even when Nanji shared things or tried to be sweet, you would always try to take more, claim more, be more. Per didn't like this behavior and would scold when necessary, but Ibinabo never corrected her daughter. She called it survival instinct and actively encouraged it, telling Tu not to let anyone, especially Nanji, outshine her. In doing so, she planted seeds of jealousy and rivalry in the little girl's heart. As the girls grew, so did the quiet tension between them. Nanji remained sweet, hardworking, and obedient, never seeming to notice or care about any hidden competition. She did her chores with grace and a cheerful attitude, even when Ibenabo made her do more than her share. T, meanwhile, often whined and resisted responsibilities, but was always protected by her mother. While Per worked, Ibenabo would subtly mistreat Nanji, giving her the harder tasks and watching her closely to ensure she didn't find joy in anything beyond her chores. But Nanji had a spark in her that couldn't be snuffed out. She had a deep love for fashion and sewing, something she didn't even realize she'd inherited from her mother. One day, while running an errand, she passed a tailor shop and was mesmerized by the beautiful dresses on display. She stood there in awe until the kind shop owner invited her in. From that day on, she would sneak away to the shop to learn the craft in secret. Her natural talent quickly blossomed, and the tailor began giving her real work. Nanji's creativity flourished, and she started designing styles that stunned even her mentor. It was her hidden joy, her quiet rebellion, and the beginning of a future no one, not even her stepmother, could imagine. It didn't take long for Ibenabo to notice that Nanji was sneaking out of the house more often than usual. Suspicious, she sent her daughter Tu to follow her. When it reported that Nanji had been spending time at a tailor shop and was already sewing dresses, Ibenabo was furious. She hadn't realized how far Nanji had come in learning the craft, and the thought of Nanji becoming as skilled or worse, more successful than her late mother, enraged her. That night, filled with resentment, she promised herself that Nanji would never rise above the. The next day, she told Per that Nanji had been leaving the house daily and accused her of potentially getting into trouble. Per, though surprised, didn't immediately assume the worst. He knew his daughter well, she was responsible, and had never given him a reason to doubt her. Still, he called Nanji in and asked her directly. When Nanji confessed that she'd only been going to learn sewing at Auntie Nim's shop, Ibenabo cut her off and exaggerated the risks, insisting that this kind of freedom would only lead to disaster. Torn between trusting his daughter and keeping her safe, Per told Nanji to stay home from then on. Although Nanji was heartbroken, she obeyed her father without protest. She stopped going to the tailor shop, knowing he only wanted to protect her, but Ibenabo was thrilled. She thought she had successfully blocked Nanji's path and wasted no time pushing into the spotlight. She dragged her daughter to the same tailor shop and insisted she start learning how to sew, even though T had no interest at all. Made it clear she didn't want to learn, but Ibenabo pressured her, warning that Nanji would surpass her if she didn't act fast. Still, Aumli would only pretend to go leaving the house each day but wandering elsewhere. Meanwhile, Ibenabo believed her daughter was progressing, completely unaware that T had never returned to the tailor shop after the first day. At home, Ibinabo watched Nanji like a hawk, calling her out every half hour just to be sure she wasn't sneaking out again. It was exhausting and suffocating for Nanji. Sewing had become her happiness, her escape, and without it, she felt empty. At night, she dreamt of designing beautiful outfits in a bright shop full of fabrics and clients. But every morning she woke up to the same cold reality. Her creativity had nowhere to go. Her noticed that something was wrong. His once joyful daughter now seemed quiet and withdrawn. One evening, he asked her what was bothering her, and she finally opened up. She spoke softly but with emotion, telling him how her mind was full of dress ideas, how she dreamed of creating beautiful clothes, and how not being able to express herself felt like being robbed of her soul. Purr sat in silence for a moment, stunned by his daughter's words. Then he smiled sadly and said, "Your mother was the best tailor in this village. I'm not surprised you carry her gift." He explained that his only reason for stopping her was fear of losing her the way he lost Bai, but he had an idea. He offered to bring out Bai's old sewing machine, still packed away in storage, and said he'd even buy fabrics for Nanyi to work with at home. Nanji's eyes lit up with joy. She hugged her father tightly, thanking him over and over. That moment was the beginning of something new. The next day, she set up her little workstation in front of their home and began sewing again. The sound of the machine, the feel of the fabric, it brought her back to life. And even though her stepmother was boiling with rage inside, Nanji finally had her spark again. When Ibinabo saw Nanji sewing outside the house, she nearly lost her mind. That old machine, Bai's machine, clattered with life again, and with it came the attention Nanji had been trying so hard to avoid. Ibinabo stood at a distance, pretending not to care, but deep down she wanted to smash that sewing machine to pieces. Still, she forced herself to stay calm. In her mind, she would soon outshine Nanji anyway. She clung to that belief like a lifeline. But everything began to unravel the day she decided to visit the tailor shop to see how Yi was doing. Expecting praise or at least progress, Ibinabo was stunned when the tailor told her that T hadn't returned since the very first day. The ground felt like it had shifted beneath her. She had invested so much energy scheming against Nanji, only to realize her own daughter wasn't even trying. When they got home later that evening, Ibinabo greeted her with 2 harsh slaps before she could say a word. "You ungrateful child," she hissed. "After all I've done, you still don't get what's at stake." T, rubbing her cheek, finally confessed that she had no interest in sewing. She had her own plan. What came next nearly gave Ibinabo a heart attack. Looked her mother straight in the eye and said, "I want to marry a rich man, a chief, or even a prince. That's the life I want. I'm too pretty to be sewing clothes like some poor village girl." Ibinabo stared at her, mouth agape, completely speechless for the first time in a long while. "A rich man?" she shouted. "What rich man would marry someone who brings nothing to the table? You think your face is enough?" "You fool!" T, in all her misplaced confidence, shot back. "Well, you didn't know how to do anything, and father still married you. So maybe I'll be fine." That was the final straw. Ibinabo flung her slipper at T, who ran out of the room before things got worse. In that moment, Ibinabo realized her plan was falling apart. She couldn't believe her daughter was this clueless, this empty-headed. Meanwhile, Nanji kept working quietly in front of the house. She was getting better and faster, and before long, neighbors began asking her to make dresses for them. One day, she offered to sew something for T, who despite everything was curious to see what Nanji could do. The result was stunning. It felt like royalty wearing the outfit and couldn't wait to show it off. The next day, T wore the dress out into the village while her mother was away. Everyone stopped her to ask where she got it. She proudly said, "My sister made it," beaming with pride. But when she got home and told her mother what had happened, Ibinabo exploded. "You did what? You told them Nanji made it? Are you stupid?" she yelled. T blinked, confused. But she did make it. Ibinabo groaned in frustration. "You don't understand. You're promoting her. From now on, anyone who asks, you tell them you made it." That night, she made a new plan. She would start ordering dresses from Nanji and pass them off as AT's work. She told T, "No one needs to know who really made the clothes. What matters is that they believe in you." T didn't love the idea, but she went along with it. Soon, Ibn Naba was bragging to everyone about her daughter's supposed talent, while Nanji continued working in silence. But people weren't blind. They noticed that he had never touched a sewing machine, and it didn't take long for whispers to start. Still, the deception continued, fueled by envy, ambition, and a desperate need to keep Nanji in the shadows, even as her talent refused to be hidden. The real turning point came when one of Nanji's regular customers stopped by her house with exciting news. Nanji was in the middle of sewing outside when the woman approached with a bright smile and said, "You're not going to believe this. I wore that purple dress you made to visit my brother at the palace, and guess what?" The queen saw it. She loved it. She asked me who made it, and I told her it was you. She wants to meet you herself. Nanji's heart skipped a beat. The queen, it didn't feel real. The woman continued, "She said you should come to the palace. She wants you to make dresses for her too. This could be a big break for you, Nangi. You could become the royal designer." Nangi was stunned, speechless, and overwhelmed with gratitude. But she wasn't the only one who heard those words. Just a few feet away, Ibinabo and T had been sitting snacking on groundnuts, and they had caught every word. Both froze in disbelief. Everything Ibinabo had feared, everything she had tried to prevent, was unfolding right before her eyes, and she hadn't even seen it coming. Later that night, Ibinabo paced the room, fuming. She couldn't let Nanji meet the queen. If Nanji got into the palace, she would rise beyond their reach, and that meant it would always live in her shadow. Ibinabo explained everything to her daughter, who, for the first time, showed genuine interest. The moment it heard about the queen, she began to imagine herself in royal halls, catching the prince's eye, becoming a queen herself. This was it, her way in. She giggled to herself at the thought, but her mother quickly grounded her. "You do know how to take measurements, right?" she asked sharply. T fell silent. She didn't even know where to begin. Ibinabo lost it? "So you don't even know basic measurements? What have you been doing all this time? The money I spent on you was wasted." Her voice echoed through the house. But she wasn't ready to give up. She told herself they still had time. "Tomorrow morning, I'll make Nanji teach you." "He must learn it fast," she said through clenched teeth. She had a new plan, dirty but effective. If Nanji wouldn't willingly step aside, then she'd be forced to. The next morning, as soon as Per left the house, Ibinabo wasted no time. She called Nanji into the room and made her stand still. With a cold, calculated tone, she said, "You are not going to that palace. T will go. She will tell them she made the dress, and you will say nothing." Nanji blinked, confused. "But the queen wants thee." "She asked for me," she whispered. Ibinabo stepped closer, her voice turning dark. "If you tell anyone, if you even think of telling your father, I swear I will kill you." "Don't test me, Nanji. You know I don't make empty threats." The room went silent. Nanji felt like the air had been knocked out of her lungs. Her dream, something she had quietly built with her own hands and hidden in her heart for so long, was being stolen from her in broad daylight. She had no one to turn to, no one to protect her. The fear in her chest wasn't just about losing the opportunity, it was the very real fear that Ibinabo would actually follow through on her threat. And in that moment, Nanji had to make an impossible choice. Stay silent and let someone else take her destiny, or risk everything for the truth. Nanji sat alone that night, sewing quietly as her mind raced. Her hands worked the fabric, but her heart wasn't in it. Every stitch reminded her of what was being taken from her. She had dreamed about this moment being recognized, stepping into her own light, maybe even changing her future. But now, because of fear and someone else's jealousy, she had to pretend like none of it belonged to her. Ibinabo's threat echoed in her ears over and over, and for the first time, Nanji felt genuinely unsafe in her own home. She looked down at her hands, these hands that had inherited her mother's gift, that had created beauty from scraps, and she questioned if she could really let all of it be stolen so easily. But at the same time, she was only a teenager. What could she do? Who would believe her? The woman who raised her had turned into her enemy, and her father, though loving, was being kept in the dark. She spent most of that night awake, tears quietly falling, not from weakness, but from the deep ache of injustice. The next day, she was dressed and ready to go to the palace, guided every step of the way by her mother. Ibinabo reminded her what to say, how to act, how to pretend she had made the beautiful gown that had caught the queen's eye. Nodded along, but deep inside, even she knew she wasn't ready. She didn't know how to take measurements. She had never even threaded a needle correctly, but Ibinabo didn't care. It wasn't about honesty, it was about getting ahead. They left early, hoping to get to the palace before anyone else had the chance to ruin their plan. Nanji stood at the doorway, holding the curtain aside as she watched them disappear into the distance, her stomach twisted in knots. She could feel a storm building inside her. A quiet kind of fury that didn't scream but settled deep, becoming resolve too. She didn't know how or when, but something inside her said the truth would eventually come to light. And in that moment, Nangi made herself a promise. No matter how long it took, she would never let anyone write her story for her again. Stories like Nanji's might feel like fiction, but the sad truth is, this kind of betrayal happens every day in real life. Talented, hardworking people are overlooked, silenced, or exploited by those who are louder, more connected, or simply more selfish. Sometimes it's in families, sometimes in schools, jobs, or communities. And often, like Nanji, people feel powerless to stop it, especially when the ones hurting them are those who are supposed to protect and support them. But if there's one thing Nanji's journey teaches us, it's this. Your gift is yours. No one can take it from you unless you give them permission. People can lie, cheat, and try to steal your spotlight, but they can never copy your soul, your vision, your spirit. So whether you're in a position like Nanji or know someone who is, remember this: truth always finds its way to the surface. Real talent doesn't need to shout, it shines. And just like that purple dress that found its way to the palace, what's meant for you will eventually reach the right eyes. So keep creating, keep going, and never let fear turn your light off.